right, welcome everybody
All
to
right, so
Support
let's
Saturday
try.
Masterclass edition. And today we have Vivian Ruiz that's talking to us about, hold on, let me grab it because I put it down. Cultivate, connect, celebrate, crafting inclusive spaces. All right, Vivian, go ahead and take it away.
Okay, good afternoon, sisters. So I'm Vivian Ruiz, and I wanted to talk to you guys today about being culturally inclusive in your preschool spaces. My background is in early childhood education, so I have been a preschool teacher, a kindergarten teacher, first grade teacher, and now I'm back to preschool. And one of the things that's always been really interesting to me is learning about different cultures and different languages. I'm right now learning Japanese, which is something that I've always wanted to learn. So, and I just love learning about different cultures and different things. So, and I've always enjoyed teaching that and including that in my classrooms. So today I'm going to talk about the importance of cultivating culturally inclusive spaces, whether it's physical or in our virtual learning environments, and then also practical strategies that we can use to make sure that we connect with our students culturally. And most of the things that I'll talk about, we can do either in person or online. There may be some little modifications that need to happen, but that should work both ways. Okay, so we're going to try sharing the screen. And let's see. All right. Let me go back. Let me stop this one. Okay. Let's share the tab. All right. So can everyone see the slides, right? And can you still hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Hopefully. Okay, so you can still hear me? Okay, so we're going to start out with a little activity. So what I want you to do is we're going to give 30 seconds, and I want you to look around your workspace, your personal workspace where you are right now, and I want you to see if you can find something that is culturally relevant to you. So it could be a picture, it could be an item, and when you have something, go ahead and give a thumbs up. Okay, and Sharice, I cannot see anything, so if we have thumbs up, let me know.
Yes, we have a few people that have thumbs ups.
Okay. Yeah, so if you were able to find something and you have your thumbs up, if you could go ahead and if you'd like to share, I'll ask like 2 or 3 people, Sharice, if we could ask them to share what you found and why you feel that is culturally relevant to you.
Go ahead and unmute yourself if you're one of those that had your thumbs up, because I don't see everybody. I think it was Bonnie was one of the ones I saw that has a thumbs up. That was Bonnie.
Yeah, that was me.
Yes.
I am not inside, but I was just thinking about what is in my house, and I thought a Bible. I live in the Bible Belt of America, so it's pretty culturally appropriate to me.
Oh, awesome.
Okay, awesome. All right. Anyone else want to share?
iPhone didn't have a name, but she also put a thumbs up.
Okay, so if you'd like to unmute and share.
I'll share. It's Victoria.
Awesome.
Okay.
So I'm Jewish and I work at a Jewish preschool. So we always have like different symbols of the holidays, but what is relevant is we celebrate Shabbat, and we always have like a Shabbat table and the symbols at the table. And I've done inclusive in culture and all that in my classrooms as well. So we always have something, and then if other kids that are not Jewish, we include them in other ways or what have you. Yeah.
Okay. So, right. If you get one more person that would like to share, we have one more.
I'll share. This is Carmen. I'm like really new.
Hi, Carmen.
It's
okay.
So I was trying to turn my camera around so I could show you what it looks like. But long story short, I bought like it looks like it's a handcrafted portrait made with fibers and stuff. And it is of African women, all of which have a child with them that are walking through maybe a field, with their goods and things like that. So I found out recently that within my genetics, I'm like 60 something percent sub-Saharan African, So I saw this thing, this portrait in a secondhand store, bought it like, a really good bargain and whatnot, and I have it hanging up. So I feel like in respect with my own background that I'm learning about and the nature of the business, the preschool, it's perfect. It's like right on time, like a confirmation. So yeah.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, ladies, for sharing. All right. So I'm going to give you another 30 seconds. And in this 30 seconds, I want you to think about your students and your learning space. If you don't have a learning space yet because you're new, think about a learning space that you have that you would like to create. And I want you to think about when your students walk into that classroom in the first 30 seconds to 1 minute, what is something that they might see or notice that they could find culturally relevant to themselves? I'm going to give you 30 seconds to think about it. When you have something, or it doesn't have to be something you can show, it could be something you're thinking of if you're not in your actual learning space. And go ahead and give a thumbs up when you think of something that you have. Okay, if we have anyone who would like to share.
Hi, this is Laura. Yes, the first thing I would see is baby dolls, as far as someone that looks like them.
Okay, awesome. All right, anyone else want to share?
I have a couple of pictures of them up in their space.
Okay. Okay, one more. Any other person would like to share?
Their language.
Okay, in what way?
It will be posted like some children they see. Either it can be, you can have music in their language playing in the background when they're walking in, or you can actually have the writing, like their name could be in English, and if they're Spanish speaking, you can also put it in Spanish as well.
Okay, awesome. All right, so the next thing I want you to do is I want you to put in the chat, you're going to put a 1 if it was easier to find something in your personal workspace, a 2 if it was easier to find something in your students, or a 3 if equally it wasn't too easy or too hard for either one.
What was 3 again?
3 was if it was the equal, not for either way. So if it was easier to find in both spaces or difficult to find in both spaces. All right. Okay, lots of threes that were equal that I'm seeing. Okay, good. I'm not seeing any ones, which is awesome. Okay, a couple of ones I just saw. All right, so this activity was just used to show why culture inclusivity is so important in early childhood education. It's about more than just being diverse or diversity. It's about affirming each child's identity and fostering a sense of belonging from the moment they enter our classroom. So as soon as they walk in, they should be able to feel like they're a part of that space and that they're important and that their culture and their life is important. Okay. So we're going to get into some more practical things. But before we do that, we need to make sure that we understand what we mean when we use the word culture. So in a nutshell, culture is talking about the beliefs, customs, traditions, language, arts, and social institutions shared by a particular group of people. So it's pretty much the way of life for a community or society, including values, norms, rituals, and practices. It's also important to remember that race is not culture. Race and culture are not the same. So race is part of culture, but it's not the total of a culture. And culture can be grouped into two different categories. You have the visible or tangible things that you can use your five senses to explore and understand: crafts, music, art, technology, food, clothing. And then you have the invisible, intangible parts of culture. These are the things where you have to actually get to know someone or the culture in order to understand values, beliefs, feelings, opinions, and assumptions and perspectives. So a quote that I really like, and I do not remember where I got the quote from, but it says, culture is not static, but rather dynamic and evolving, influenced by historical, geographical, economic, and social factors. So basically that means that, culture does not stay the same. So culture can evolve over time. Traditions change. The ways of music can change. The way people believe things can change over time. So it's important to remember that we always have to be timely and relevant when we're talking about culture with our students. Okay, and we're talking about inclusivity today. So we want to remember that, it's important that children see in us that we understand and appreciate differences. So they learn a lot by watching us, the adults and older kids around them. So if we show our students that we value cultural diversity, then they will learn to value cultural diversity. And another quote, which I really like, it says, remember, what is not included in the environment can be as powerful a contributor to attitudes as what it is included in the environment. And a lot of times, we try to accommodate different cultures or different beliefs, and we end up sometimes being exclusive. So we're trying not to offend one culture or another, and we end up excluding some things. And so when we do that, we kind of make the students whose cultural events are excluded feel like that another culture is more important than theirs. So we have to be careful that we make sure that we're including and being inclusive of everyone and not excluding things. So thinking about the children that come into your classroom, whether it be 5 students or 20 students or 40 students, they're all going to come from different walks of life, right? Your center's community is going to have families from different cultures, religions, skin colors, and financial backgrounds. You may have students who have single parent families, blended families, families with 2 moms or 2 dads. They may be living with their birth parents, or they may be in foster care, or they may be living with grandparents, or they may be adopted. So it's really important to be mindful of the families in your center when you're thinking of creating activities, and especially when you're thinking of creating family things. So now we're going to move into some practical strategies. So being culturally inclusive is like a big puzzle that has lots of pieces. And some of the pieces that are represented here are representation, environment, curriculum, community engagement, accuracy, and relevance. And it's important that all those pieces go together when you're trying to be culturally relevant or culturally inclusive in your classroom. So you can't like kind of focus on just one thing or one part. You have to make sure that they all go together. I am going to share this PowerPoint or this presentation with Sharice so that she can add it with the recording. And at the end of the presentation, there are some slides that explain each puzzle piece a little bit more in depth. I didn't want to do that since we only have an hour. So I wanted to kind of make sure I got into some practical strategies and ideas and things like that first. So the first thing I want to talk about that's really important is names, understanding your students' names, making sure that you know how to pronounce each of your students' names and talking to parents before actually trying to pronounce those names. Make sure that you are asking parents, because sometimes even names that we've seen before are not what we think they are. So I'm going to do another activity with you guys. And this one, I'm going to show you some names. And you can go ahead and unmute when I put the name up and say what you think that name is. So here's the first one. And you can go ahead and unmute and call out what you think that name is.
Candace.
Candace.
Okay. So I'm hearing Candace.
Candace.
Okay. So this child was an African-American student and her name was Kandashi. So it's spelled the same way that we would spell Candace, but in speaking to her parents, it was Kandashi. And her parents were very adamant about making sure that you said Kandashi and not Candace. All right. And this name?
Stephanie.
Stephanie or Stefani?
Okay, I heard both Stephanie and Stefani. This was one of my Hispanic students, and her name was Stefani. So some of you got it correct. So it's just a different spelling of Stephanie, but Stefani is part of the way that it was pronounced.
Stephanie.
Okay.
John Paul.
John Paul.
Juan Paul.
Okay. So this student was from Congo, and his parents spoke French. So his name was Jean Paul.
Jean
So again, and he would not answer me unless I said his name exactly correctly. So I had to say Jean Paul.
They're supposed to put E next to G, Jean Paul. They missed one letter.
Actually, no, this is how he spelled his name. And actually, my
Jean-Paul.
brother's name is also Jean, spelled this way. So, yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah. And that's the thing about it, that we see some names and we know how we have seen them spelled before. But especially nowadays, names tend to be spelled differently. And I was always taught that, you can spell your name however you want and say whatever your name is. It doesn't matter because it's your name. So you get to choose. Okay, so this last one.
Manuel.
Manuel.
Okay. So I've heard Manuel. This is Manuel. This is Manuel. This is actually my son. His name is Manuel, and his experience is a really good illustration of why it's really important to know your students' names. He never gets his name pronounced correctly. It's always Manuel or Manuel, and he used to get really upset about it. So he told us to call him Manny. So he doesn't even want to use his name. But we were actually talking about this when I was doing the presentation, and he said, I really love my name. I love what my name means, but nobody ever says it right. So I just was like, just call me Manny, because I want my name to be messed up all the time. So it's just an illustration of why it's important to make sure that you talk to your parents, talk to your students, and make sure that you are pronouncing their names correctly, because names are a very powerful and very important part of children's culture. They could be family names, they could be names that were passed down and connected to different things. So we want to make sure that we understand and pronounce all of our children's names correctly. And I do have a tendency of giving my kids nicknames, my students. And I always talk to parents at the beginning of the year and say, hey, I have a tendency. It just happens naturally. Don't know why. I've always done it. So, if you don't want your child to have a nickname, I can keep that in mind, that I always say their name correctly. Or if your child doesn't like the nickname that I say, they're okay to tell me that, Miss Ruiz, say my name right, please. So, just making sure that that's something that you keep and are mindful of. Okay, our next part is talking about family. Family is everything. So we want to be mindful of family dynamics. So it's really important when planning, especially planning family events or activities, that we understand, what our children's families are like. And, by acknowledging and accommodating their differences, we ensure that all families feel included and valued in our community. So plan family events or celebrations that are inclusive of all family members or family structures. Excuse me. So, that's when we're thinking about Mother's Day and Father's Day. Not saying that we can't do those, but maybe thinking of doing something as like a family day instead of a Mother's or Father's Day. Or if you do a Mother's Day, do like Powerful Women in My Life Day or something, so that it includes, families that may not have a mom or families that may not have a dad. Really important to do that. So as an illustration, their father passed when they were really little. So when my son was 3 years old, they were doing a Father's Day. And even though my brother came to represent for him, he was so upset and so sad that he didn't have a dad that he wouldn't participate. He hid behind his uncle, or he would go under the table, and he just really wouldn't participate. So it's really important that we be mindful of the family structures. And, if we're planning something, we can always talk to the parents of our students to make sure that we are being sensitive to those things. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is allowing our children to be experts in the classroom. So, we have children who have different skills and have learned different things from culture, from their family. They can share stories. One of the things that's very easy to include is language. So an activity that I always like to do at the beginning of the year, we talk about how we greet each other. And there is a book called Say Hello that is included at the end of the slides. So when you guys get the slide presentation, you'll be able to see it with the author's name and all of that. But we read the book, Say Hello. And in that book, it talks about lots of different ways to say hello in different languages. And what I used to do with the kids is I would have the kids say, okay, how do you say hello? How do you greet people? Like if you go to grandma's house, how do you say hello? Or if you meet a new person, how do you say hello? Do you shake their hand? Do you wave? Do you say hi? Do you bow? What do you do? And then I would take a picture of each student doing the gestures that they do when they say hello. So if they say hi and they're waving, then I'm going to take a picture of them waving. If they bow, I'll take a picture of them bowing. And then put those pictures all up on a bulletin board. And under each picture, I put the word they use for a greeting. So if they say hello or hola or konnichiwa, I put those up under the picture. And then all around the rest of the bulletin board, I put different words for hello, just like in this slide. And then the kids get twofold. They get to see themselves in the classroom on the board. They get to see that there's different ways of doing the same thing so that we're different but the same. And they also get to see their language represented in the classroom. So I always really liked doing that activity with them. And I did that with, preschool, with kindergarten, with first grade. You can even do it with older kids because names are just really important, and language is very important, so it's okay for kids to learn other languages as well. All right, students' cultures. So this is really important in talking about our students' cultures. Understanding where they come from and what shapes their experiences is really important. So it helps us to connect with them on a deeper level. It also helps us to understand behaviors. So I know that when I was going to school and when I was younger, when your parents talked to you or when an adult talked to you, you had to look them in the eye. And if you weren't looking them in the eye, you were being disrespectful. But there are cultures where that is not okay, where if you're talking to the child, they're not supposed to look you in the eye. It's disrespectful for them to look you in the eye. In Japan, it's culturally acceptable to make slurping sounds when you're eating noodles, when you're eating, but a lot of people don't like that. In America, that's not okay. you don't do that. But the child is not doing something wrong. It's just what they're culturally used to. And also wait time. So when you ask a child a question, you kind of expect the child to answer back. And if the child doesn't answer within a certain amount of time, you feel like they're either ignoring you or not paying attention. But in some cultures, it is considered the tradition or the way of answering a question to wait before you answer. So that shows that the person that is asking you a question that you're thinking before you answer the question. So it's really important to understand those cultures. You can, if you have a student coming in and it's a culture that you've never dealt with or you don't know anything about, you can talk to the parents, you can Google to get information. But it's really important that you do understand the cultures of students in your classroom. And also remember that students of the same race can have different cultures. So, we don't want to just assume that because students look the same, that they are from the same culture and that they have the same traditions and beliefs. So now this is something that we all look at when we first begin to start setting up our classrooms, is our physical environment. So we want to think about how our classroom is arranged, right? So a powerful way to show students they're important is by making sure they see themselves reflected in the classroom. So these are included. I have a handout that I'll put in the chat at the end that has these questions in it. But these are some questions when we were learning about cultural diversity that we were told, these are good questions to ask before you set up your classroom. When you're getting ready to put things into your classroom, ask these questions. So can students see books by authors of various races? Is there representation for the cultures in your community? So even though those cultures might not be represented in your classroom, they are part of the community. So you also want to bring those in to your classroom. Are different languages and countries showcased? Do students see people with disabilities in the classroom? Can children hear their first languages spoken or sung? Do you encourage families to support their children's development in their first language? This was a big thing because when I first started teaching, I was a bilingual kindergarten teacher. So I actually taught in Spanish, but a lot of the ESOL teachers, the English as a second language teachers, would tell their parents. I started teaching a long time ago, like in the 90s, but a lot of the teachers would tell, the ESOL teachers would tell the parents not to speak to their kids in their home language at home, that they needed to use English so that they would learn English. And that really bothered me because being bilingual is amazing. And a lot of children would lose their home language, or they'd be afraid to use their home language and not feel like it was something that was valued, that they needed to use English. And so, and also parents would feel like, oh my goodness, I can't speak English. What am I going to do with my kid? And so to make sure that, it's valued, it's okay. Speak your language at home, because they're going to learn English in school. They're going to be around other kids who are speaking English. They're definitely going to learn it. It takes about 3 years to learn academic language anyway. So, they learn social language quickly, but they're going to learn, English, and you want to maintain their home language. When displaying photos of the children and families, do they reflect their cultural backgrounds? Do they avoid stereotypical representations of food, clothing, and practices? I taught my kids in kindergarten one year about this, the winter solstice, and we talked about Native Americans. And the children, when looking at pictures, expected to see Native Americans dressed the way you see in Westerns, with the headdresses and the feathers. And I hadn't thought about that at the time. And I was like, no, they dress the same way that we do now. They wear jeans and t-shirts and flannel and whatever. So, making sure that when you show pictures of different cultures, that you show, they may have a traditional dress, but they also dress just like everyone else. And then see, do you view cultural differences as potential resources or as challenges to overcome? Do classroom labels, dictations, and signs reflect the children's first languages? Do you discuss cultural differences in a positive, respectful way? Okay. And then something else you want to consider, or other things you want to consider when setting up your physical environment, is that you have images and visual displays in the classroom that are gender balanced and reflect the diversity of the community and the world outside the classroom. So talking about gender balance, you want, when you have firefighters, do they only see male firefighters, or can they see female firefighters? Do they see dads taking care of the babies in pictures? Do they see dads in the kitchen cooking instead of it always just being moms? So just making sure that there is a balance of those kinds of pictures and images. Provide text resources and learning materials in the classroom that reflect diversity of culture, ethnicity, faith, and language, and differences in socioeconomic status, physical ability, and family structure. And we'll talk a little bit more. I will talk about specific ways to choose materials and books for your classroom that are culturally inclusive. Establish classroom routines that are sensitive to the individual needs and cultural norms of students. Ensure that classroom responsibilities are inclusive, gender balanced, and not stereotyped. And forgive me if I'm reading, but it's a lot. Label centers and frequently used materials and languages spoken by the children in the classroom. So you can label things in English. And then if you want to, if you have children in your class that speak Japanese, or kids that speak Spanish, or kids that speak French, you can label them in a different color. So then they know, like, the English is blue and French is always going to be red. Or and then if you don't know the words, you can look them up on Google Translate. You can talk to the parents and ask the parents to write those down for you. I had a student one year who spoke Japanese, and she was learning English in the classroom. So I told her, I was like, hey, if you teach me some Japanese words and I teach you some English words, then we'll both be able to speak to each other in each language. And that, she was really excited about being able to do that. So that was another way of her feeling like, you know, her language was valued, and wasn't just English that was valued in the classroom. Okay. So the next thing we're going to talk about is classroom displays. So we're going to talk about this display a little bit later when we're talking about some practical activities. But this is a border that goes around the bulletin board, and it just has pictures of different, different children. This poster has pictures of different children saying everyone belongs. So you just want to make sure that your displays show different types of children, different types of cultures, and it's not all one-sided. So you don't want it to all be one culture represented in your classroom. You want to try to find things that highlight diversity. They should reflect different faces in your classroom. Give students opportunity to display their best work. It helps with not only their feeling of belonging, but also their language, because they can talk about their work with their classmates, like what they did and what looks different and why I did mine differently than you did yours. Encourage children to bring pictures of their families for display in the classroom. So that helps with them feeling their belonging, but it also helps a little bit with your separation anxiety. We always had the kids bring a picture of their family so that if they were feeling like they missed family, they could take those pictures out and look at. But having them displayed in the classroom is also a good way to help them feel connected and comfortable in being in the classroom. So learning centers, toys, and games. So you want to provide resources that appeal to both boys and girls. You know that girls can play with trucks and boys can play with dolls, but you want to make sure that you have enough variety of those materials, and also that you encourage the children that they can play with whatever they want, that there's no set thing that all the girls have to play with dolls and all the boys have to play with trucks or building blocks or whatever, that anybody can play with anything in the classroom. You want to make sure that your materials reflect diverse cultures, social backgrounds, and experiences. Use resources that reflect the interests and perspectives of both genders. Include dolls and puppets that represent different cultures and skin colors. Include both female and male dolls. Dress up clothes in various styles. You can also have, there are some sets of dress up clothes that have cultural dress in them also. That's something that can be a little controversial depending on the culture of what the outfits are, but that is something that you can include in your classroom. Dishes and play food from different cultures. So you can add menus from different restaurants around in your area, so children can see the different types of food. So it's really cool to go and get menus from different, different cultural restaurants, and put those also in the dramatic play area so the kids can see that there's different foods and people eat different things or maybe the same things that you eat. So there are some examples of things. This is also included in the handout, some diverse doll sets. There's Lottie Dolls collection, which is families, and you can mix and match the families. You have the Little People world sets that have diverse cultures. They also have differently abled students or differently abled dolls in that collection. When you're choosing games, you want to choose things that include cooperation, that shows diversity. You want things that, kind of get them to work together. So this is a really cute little game. It's called Sneaky Snacky Squirrel, where the kids kind of have to work together to keep the squirrel from stealing the snacks. And I Never Forget a Face, which is a memory game, but it has different faces of different children that look different. And these are global puzzles. These are global child puzzles. They have from different cultures, different countries, and they're puzzles that the kids can put together. And then when you're looking at your instruments, if you have instruments in the classroom, instead of sticking to the the triangle and the cymbals and the regular drums that you normally have, you can include instruments from different cultures. Lots of good places to find these things. You can go to Marketplace. You could look for them in thrift stores. If you have the budget that way, you can look in Lakeshore, our discount school supply. There is a Tot Swap in some places. If you look it up online, you might be able to find it. Tot Swap, they sell used toys. So you may be able to find things like that. So there's lots of ways to include those things. You can also ask families if they have, toys like this that they don't use anymore that they would like to donate to your classroom. So books and literature. So when we're talking about books and literature, the very first thing you want to think about is making sure that the books you use don't have offensive language. So you want to really look at, especially if you're looking at older books, sometimes they're still using words that are not considered acceptable or appropriate. Like some books back, when I was reading books back in the day, I did not know that using the name Eskimo was actually offensive. It's the Inuits in Alaska. So you want to make sure that you make sure that your books are relevant to the times and the changes. Like we said, culture changes over time. So we want to make sure that we keep track of those kind of things. Some of the things, there's 10 things you want to look for when choosing a children's book for your classroom. And again, these are in the handout. And also there are examples for of books that meet each of these criteria that you can use to help you kind of pick out other books. Make sure they avoid offensive stereotypes. Make sure they're authored by cultural insiders. So you want to choose books that are written by authors from that culture. So if you're reading a book about Hispanic culture, you want to try to find books that are written by Hispanic authors. If you're reading a book about Japanese culture, you want to try to find books that are written by Japanese authors. Historical accuracy, just like I was talking about, you make sure that they have accurate depiction of cultural elements and words. Compelling storytelling, engaging stories, and relatable characters. Avoid stories that oversimplify complex issues. Make sure they include cultural language. And again, these are not things that every book is not going to have everything, but you want to look for as many of these elements as possible when you're choosing books. Precise cultural representation. Make sure they accurately represent the specific cultural roots of the depicted group. Promotes inclusivity and understanding among different cultural groups. Reflect positive cultural values such as cooperation, kindness, and respect, and acknowledges diversity within culture. So I have a story here that's called Strictly No Elephants. And I'm going to read the story to you guys, but I want you to kind of pay attention to the story as we're going through, looking at the pictures and listening to the story. And at the end, I'm going to ask you whether you think this book is culturally inclusive or whether it is not culturally inclusive. And if you can kind of give me an example of what you noticed in the book that would make it culturally inclusive or not. Strictly No Elephants, written by Lisa Manchev. The trouble with having a tiny elephant for a pet is that you never quite fit in. No one else has an elephant. Every day I take my elephant for a walk. His is a very thoughtful sort of walk. He doesn't like the cracks in the sidewalk much. I always go back and help him over. That's what friends do, lift each other over the cracks. Today, I'm walking my elephant to number 17. It's Pet Club Day and everyone will be there. Come along, there's a good boy. I coax him the last few feet. It'll be fine. When I look up, there's a sign on the door. Strictly no elephants. My tiny elephant leads me back to the sidewalk, never minding the cracks. That's what friends do, brave the scary things. Did you try to go to the pet club meeting too? The girl asked. Yes, I say, but they don't allow elephants. The sign didn't mention skunks, the girl says, but they didn't want to play with them either. They don't know any better, I tell her. He doesn't stink, the girl adds. No, he doesn't, I agree. What if we start our own club? We can play here, one of our new friends says. All of us. So we paint our own sign. My tiny elephant will give you directions if you need them. Because that's what friends do. So that was the end of the story. So if anyone wants to go ahead and unmute and tell me whether you thought it was inclusive or not inclusive.
I thought it was inclusive, and it was a good way, a good discussion, a way to start a discussion about what to do when people don't want to include you or don't want to include your friends, like different ways you can handle that. Because, you know, that happens on the playground. Such and such won't play with me. Okay, well, you know, will Susie play with you? You know, you try to redirect them. But this, I like the way they
Right. Okay, awesome. Anyone else?
I too thought it was inclusive. I was looking at the pictures. They had different, all of the children didn't look the same. They had different cultures, I say, different versions of the kids and different cultures, different colors shown in the book.
Okay, awesome. Anyone else? Okay, so yes, that was an example of a book that would be inclusive. So some of the things that it had in there was it showed kindness and respect, so it reflected cultural values. It promoted inclusivity, compelling storytelling, I think. The characters of different races and skin colors were represented. And the solution was not something that was oversimplified, but it was a good solution. And it is a good starting point for discussion. So thank you guys. Awesome. All right. So we're going to talk about some activities. And the first thing I want to talk about is holidays around the world. We've all probably done a holidays around the world activity or a unit in our classrooms. We usually do it like November, December, January, maybe. And it's a really good way of beginning to talk about cultural inclusivity if we haven't done it before that point. But it's also something that can't be done on its own. So, it can be a bit narrow in scope. We're celebrating different holidays, but it's just a small piece of culture. It can be a bit surface level because we're just learning facts about how different cultures celebrate. We're also focusing on the big holidays like Christmas or Hanukkah, and not really looking at the smaller holidays that do make up some cultures or celebration days. So we want to make sure that, it's really, like I said, it's a really great unit to do, but we want to make sure that we go beyond that. And then we're not just saying, okay, we did that holidays around the world. We've got that inclusivity done. We're done. So we want to make sure that, we're including everything. So one of the things that I also like to do, and if you've seen my business page, I have daily posts on there that are celebration days. So they're different kinds of things. They may be holidays, or they may just be like silly things that are celebrated in different cultures. Like there was have a tea party day on there, but every day there's a different thing that could be celebrated that could be connected to culture. So that's something that, you could do even if you have, whether you're online or in person on your business page, you can always add that to the activities. Okay, and other activities we're going to talk about. So we want to make sure that you get to know your students. So when you're trying to plan for your students, you want to make sure that your students, know their learning styles, know what things work for them, what things they're interested in, and that could be part of their culture. A really great thing is to talk to your students, and I know that we do that, but talk to your students one-on-one. So when they're playing, like talk about why are they playing that way? Like, oh, what are you doing? Oh, why are you doing, why are you playing with your doll that way? Or why is your doll doing that? So it also helps us to kind of get some more information about their culture and what they're thinking. Talk about important things, share stories. So you can share stories from your culture or from your childhood and allow them to share stories as well. Show different types of media. So not only, and I know that we try to stay away from screens a lot of times at our preschools, but the occasional video about different cultures or from stories from different cultures or things like that are good. Songs and music are always good. Using music as a cultural connection is really a great thing because we all do music in our preschools, if we do circle time or during the day. And there's a really good website called preschoolplaybook.com. It's going to be in the handouts, so you guys don't have to write it down if you forget it. But preschoolplaybook.com has lots of cultural songs. So it shows you and you can download the songs and the lyrics. And so you can use those with your students in your classroom. And there's some in there, I know, some of us in school probably know some of these songs like Frere Jacques, Alouette, Tingaleo, Dos Elefantes, La Cucaracha. So different songs that you may have heard that you can use in your classroom with your kids throughout the day. Also, something that I used to do is during quiet time or during their playtime, I would always play something different. So one day I might play Native American flute music. Another day I would play Latin music. Another day I would just play, the silly songs that they normally hear. But so that they're getting that exposure to different, and they're hearing that, oh, there's different music that can be incorporated. And hey, they're celebrating. I know that song, or oh, my mommy sings that song, or my grandma used to sing me that song. So it also creates those great cultural connections for the kids. The other thing that does that same thing are stories, rhymes, and finger plays. So rhymes and finger plays, I love doing little finger plays with the kids. They're fun, not only because it's fun to watch them try to move their hands the right way and try to kind of get that small motor together, but they remind me of my childhood, things I used to do, like the itsy bitsy spider and doing those things. And there are versions of those in other languages, and also you can learn different rhymes and finger plays from different cultures. So the itsy bitsy spider has la araña pequeñita in Spanish. That is the same thing. So you can teach them the English and then teach them the one in Spanish or the other language so that they learn them both. And it shows that, also shows the value of knowing more than one language. And then I think I mentioned some of these, and I think I might have skipped over them. So the Hello Bulletin Board display that we talked about, the ways of greeting each other. One material that I really like is the Crayola Colors of the World crayons, because they allow the children to choose their skin tone and kind of to see that there's so many different skin tones available. When I was little, we had the choice of black, white, peach, or tan. those were kind of the colors that we used to color faces and things. But now they have so many variations in those crayons so the kids can really see that, you know, we all have different skin tones and those are all represented there. So doing self-portraits using those crayons. Where are you from map activity, which is a really nice one where you can either take pictures of your students or have them draw their own pictures. You put a big world map up on the wall or on a bulletin board and then put the children's pictures around it. And from the picture, you take a piece of yarn and a pin and you put a pin into the country of their origin, so where they come from. So if they come from America, you can, you know, from North America, go ahead and put it in North America. But if they, you know, if their family is from India, you can put a pin in India. And so the kids can really see, like, look, we're all come from lots of different places, but we're all here together now. So, you know, it's okay for, you know, things to be same but different. Doing an international festival with families, even if you only have 5 or 6 students, you know, that's 5 or 6 families that all probably have different traditional foods that they eat in their family or traditional things that they do, stories that they tell. But you can have like an international day or an international night and have the families, you know, come in and share things that are important to them in their culture. Storytelling days, you can invite parents, grandparents in to tell stories that are traditional in their family. Excuse me. And then learning the meaning of your name is another really good activity. Like my sons know the name, like their name, what their names mean, and it helps them to kind of really connect to their name. There is that activity. I did add it into the handout. Or I'm sorry, it's in the slides at the end of the presentation that you guys will get. So, you know I went through a lot. And I might have gone a little fast, but you know, if you guys have questions or if you wanted to share things that you might do in your classroom that or with your students that I didn't get to mention or takeaways from the presentation, feel free to do that. I will put the handout link in the chat. And I'm going to turn it back over to Cherise. So if you guys have questions, you can go ahead and ask, and I'll be here. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Vivian. Does anybody have any questions or anything that popped out to you that you would like to share before we close out this presentation?
Hi, this is Mokina, coach. And I just want to reiterate on everything that she said. As an early childhood educator, everything that she's speaking on is strictly NACCE accreditation stuff. I had a child in my class one time as she was talking about the kids who speak different languages, right? And how some people try to stop them from speaking their native language in your class. But what we did was that child was able to help us translate to her family because her parents only spoke Spanish. But when she came to school, Sophia started learning English and Spanish. So she was able to help us translate. We had another student, Soraya, who was from a different culture, who couldn't look you in the eye. And we kept wondering, because in our culture, like children have to look you in the eye, right? And so we had to ask permission from the parent or the father to please give Soraya permission to look the teachers in the eye when we speak to her at school so that we know that she's understanding us, you know. But if she wasn't able to speak to us or look us in the eye, then we understood from the parent teacher conference that it wasn't her being disrespectful to us. It was actually just her culture. And she also mentioned like children could have the same color skin complexion, but are not of the same cultural backgrounds. So that was another thing that was also true. You can have different kids, but some, like I'm from New Orleans, so we have kids who came from Haiti or Haitian students or Jamaican students, and they may look the same, but their family cultures, beliefs, and everything is totally different.
Right.
So some of the families in New Orleans, we have a culture of doing sucking lines and taking kids to parades. And then some children didn't understand what that was. So bringing those books in is very important. So I'm just reiterating on everything that she said. She touched points on so many key things. I came in toward the middle part, but everything that she says, I'm telling you, 100% correct. 100% correct. You didn't miss anything when you spoke on everything that you talked about. You hit it on the nail with it. So kudos to you, thumbs up. But just to reiterate, yes, that's exactly what you can do. And music is always the easiest to bring kids in when you don't know their culture. Just playing the different music and the different songs. So Twinkle Twinkle Little Star could be played in Spanish or the different languages. It also can be played. You can also do Twinkle Twinkle Little Star with sign language, because we did have some students who were hearing impaired as well. Well, that's it. I'm not going to take up all the time. That's I'm
Thank
just
you
saying.
so much. Yeah, no, thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. I know
I've
for
taught.
me, it made me remember like, oh, you know what, my kids know some of these songs. I was like, we should probably learn them in Spanish. And so it made me think about that. And then also I used to, like when I used to teach before, I used to always do like what you did, play different music from different places. And I haven't done that since I've opened up my own preschool. I've totally forgot about that. You
That
know, I
music
used to play
does something.
instrumental, you know, a lot of instrumental musics or whatever, from different cultures and stuff. So that kind of reminded me a little bit when you had mentioned that, Vivian. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have to go back to that.
Yeah, it breaks the barrier. It makes it easier for the kids to welcome you and come up to you, and that you'll hear them singing, and you'll be like, "She's singing that song." Like you'll have a kid who never. We had children who like didn't speak or didn't talk, and then so sometimes we will question like, does this child have a hearing impairment? Like, is this child reading our lips so that we can be able to communicate that to the parents that maybe they need to take them to get testing for hearing or speech or something. And then one day we just heard a child just out the blue just started singing a song. And it was like, oh, that's what it was. We needed a connection with her. But anytime that you're teaching, and as a teacher, my number one key thing is always make a connection with every single student that you have. And if you forget somebody on one day, that's the first person you need to go back to on the next day and make that connection with that child, no matter how big or small it is, because everyone just want to feel love and they all just want to know that they matter. That's all Mokina's going to say. I'm going to go ahead, be quiet, because I'll keep going.
All right. Well, thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you for that, and welcome to All Stars. And thank
Thank
you
you.
again, Vivian. That was a great presentation, and yeah,
You're welcome.
I appreciate it.
Hey, you're very welcome. Thank you.